So basically, normal humans, you know, not military trained humans, beat the best military in the world. That's so cool. Hi and welcome back. So I really love the story about the Star Spangled Banner. And that led me to that I now want to learn a little bit more about the American history. And today we are starting with the American Revolution. I think I knew a few things. I think, first of all, that there was something with England, I think. And I think something with a Tea Party, Boston Tea Party. I think we had this in school. And yeah, in the end, I think that America got independence. But what were all the nitty-gritty details? That is exactly what I want to learn more about today. And we are reacting today to Oversimplified. I really love this channel. I watched their Punic Wars and I really love their humor, so I'm very looking forward to this video. But before we do that, please make sure, if you like the content, to hit like and subscribe. It would help me so much and would show me that you want to see more of this content. Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's go into the reaction.
Holy smokes. Christopher Columbus, that is no way to address the King and Queen of Spain. What is wrong with you? Okay, so you know how we're looking for...
Wait, so we are now in the 15th century, if I'm not mistaken.
Trade route to India, right? Right. And the Earth is round, right? Right. So I'm thinking we can just sail the other way around the planet, right? Yeah. So I set sail, right? And I reach India, right? Right. Wrong. I did not reach India. I did not. All right. No, all right. Get to the point. Did you know there's a whole nother freaking continent out there? Okay.
Even two. There are two continents.
And you think I should care about this? Why? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget to mention there's gold everywhere?
Ooh.
Gold? Columbus
But wasn't it like that Christopher Columbus didn't learn until his death that it wasn't India? Or am I totally mistaken?
In Central America in October 1492, and he had the time of his life. And by that I mean he went on a huge theft and murder spree. He stole gold, jewelry, people, and a hammock. And then he returned to show off all of his riches,
It's such an asshole move to just steal people.
Few previously undiscovered items such as tobacco, the pineapple, turkeys, and a hammock. Now I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified, Columbus didn't discover America, the Vikings did. And you'd be partially right. In the 11th century, Leif Erikson was the first European to land in America. But hey, if you love Vikings so much, then why don't you check out today's sponsor? Vikings War of Clans is a...
So yeah, if you want, you can check out this game. We skip a bit.
100 gold coins and a protective shield. Don't forget to look me up and join my Vikings clan under my nickname, Oversimplified. Now where was I? Oh yeah, Columbus, time of his life, hammock. And suddenly the race was on to explore and conquer the new world. After a couple centuries of warring with the natives and
Interesting
each other,
that the Dutch were there as well. Or Luxembourg? Is this... It looks more like the Luxembourg flag.
To explore and conquer the new world. After a couple centuries of warring with the natives and each other, the European powers had claimed quite a lot of land, including this area, which both the English and the French claimed as theirs. One day the French said, I'm going to build some forts along here. And the English were like, could you not? And the French said, sorry, but no, I could not. And they went ahead and built their forts, which pissed off the English. So they sent an up-and-coming British lieutenant colonel by the name of George Washington with a combined force of British troops and Native Americans. After a short battle, the French commander said, all right, we surrender. Okay, boys, pack it up. They're surrendering. Oh, sorry. Was I not meant to split his head open with a tomahawk? Don't worry. It's not like this will start a 7-year-long major global conflict. And what happened next was a 7-year-long major global conflict, which Great Britain won. At the peace negotiations, Spain gave up Florida, while France gave up all of its territories in North America.
Wow.
But Britain's victory came at a cost, a £60 million cost. They were now broke, in a lot of debt, and had to come up with some way to repay it. So they went to the colonies and said, okay, listen up. So a huge part of the war was spent protecting you from the French.
So interesting. It looks so different from today's US.
And now we have no money because of it. So... I'm not sure what you're saying here. Okay, so we spent a lot of money protecting you from the French, right? Right. And now we're broke. That certainly is a
Did they actually protect them? Or did they just say, hey, we protect you, you know?
Listen to me. We spent all of our money protecting you, and now we need money. Can you please pay us back some money?
No.
No. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and tax you. In 1764, Britain introduced the Sugar Act, forcing the colonists to import sugar and molasses exclusively from the British. And to
How can you force somebody to import something?
Duties on them. Then a year later, they introduced the extremely controversial Stamp Act, and it worked a little something like this. Hello, shopkeep. Hello, Mr. Bungleberry. Here's the deed for your new shack. Stamp. That'll be 3 pence, please. Wait, what was that? It's the new tax. I get a stamp on any paper or documentation I make, and you have to pay for it. Would you like to see this pamphlet that explains everything? Yes, please. Okay. Stamp. 2 pence, please. This is awful. You know what? Just give me a deck of cards so I can go gamble my pain away. Okay.
Oh no.
No.
Oh no.
Don't do it.
No.
Stamp. Obviously, the colonists were like, hey, my dudes, this new tax legislation right here, this is BS. Until now, they had enjoyed relative freedom to rule themselves, and now suddenly Britain was asserting its control. They were especially unhappy because they didn't have any representatives in the parliament that was levying taxes on them. So they protested.
That's unfair.
Orators gave fiery speeches. British goods were boycotted, and anyone loyal to the British found themselves increasingly harassed. The whole thing actually began to take quite a toll on British business, and after just a couple years, the British were forced to repeal the Stamp Act. But we still desperately need money. What should we do? We could try taxing the colonies. Great idea. Wait, didn't we literally just try that and it failed miserably? Man, look at me. I look fabulous. Have you ever seen such a handsome boy? No siree, Georgie.
To be honest, I think you always see with those kings and barons and stuff like this that they look a bit weird. I don't know if this is because they just always had, sex with each other, because always a royal has to marry another royal. But I don't know, they look weird, don't they?
No way. You're the handsomest, smartest, most popular king that ever lived, and everybody likes you. You're doing such a good job. Your Majesty? Oh, you're still here. Get the hell out. So in 1766, the British made a declaration saying, we can do what we want because we're in charge and you can all go suck it. Then they levied a whole bunch of new taxes on the Americans via import duty. Glass? There's a tax for that. Lead? There's a tax for that. Paper? Tea? Oil? There's a tax for that.
It's so British to put a tax on tea. I don't know. They love their tea and it's so British to put a tax on that. Please hit like and subscribe. It would help me so much. Thank you.
And the Americans boycotted British goods, British business felt the pinch, and the British had to back down. Alright, this is ridiculous. They're my colonies and I have to be able to assert my control. Repeal all the new taxes except for the one on tea. Also send 1,000 troops to Boston to take control.
Again, the tea tax.
Oh, and make the colonists pay for them. And as British troops arrived, the tension in Boston was palpable. You could cut it with a knife, and it was all about to come to a head. On March 5th, a band of local patriots began heckling a British guard at the customs house. More and more Americans joined in the heckling, while more British troops turned up in support of their comrade. Snowballs were thrown at the British. The snowballs turned to rocks, the rocks to oyster shells. The soldiers, outnumbered, panicked.
Why are oyster shells harder than rocks?
To another, and you can see where this is going. 5 civilians were killed. The Patriot press throughout the colonies declared the Boston Massacre an unwarranted crime committed against the people of Boston by the cruel British. And
is this maybe, tell me, is this a reason why you have the right to bear arms in your constitution? Because I could see that at the point of time that was very important because you had to defend yourself from the British. Tell me if this is the reason why, or maybe is there a different reason for it?
Anger continued to grow. A British revenue schooner that ran aground in Rhode Island was burned by the locals. When it came to light that the governor of Massachusetts supported the suppression of the colonists, his house was burned by the locals. And next, the colonists would set their sights on the remaining tax on tea. On December 16, 1773, a band of patriots known as the Sons of Liberty disguised themselves as Native Americans, marched down to Boston Harbor, boarded a British merchant ship loaded with tea, and in front of thousands of spectators, threw nearly 10,000 pounds worth of tea
Boston
overboard.
Tea Party.
The British were disgusted, and they punished Massachusetts with a vengeance. They dissolved its General Assembly, revoked their charter, and sent 3,000 more troops to occupy the city, meaning Boston and Massachusetts were now essentially under the direct rule of Great Britain. And oh boy, were the people pissed. The other colonies saw what was happening and worried they might be next.
Why are only the colonies here on the Atlantic coast mentioned? Because we see here also this one and this one and this one and this one are also, part of the British Empire. Why are those not part of the US?
So they called a brain trust to decide what to do. 56 delegates from 12 colonies gathered and met in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress, and the roll call read like a who's who of America's finest thinkers. I'm talking lawyers extraordinaire Johnny A. and Johnny J, experienced military commander George Washington,
I know him.
Businessman and future alcoholic beverage Samuel Adams, fiery orator Patty H, guy who married a
alcoholic beverage? Did I miss something?
rich lady, Big J. Dickinson. And while they weren't present at the first Congress, soon names like James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and
I know those two, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. I have heard of them.
Hamilton would all serve time in the Continental Congress. The question now, though, was what to do about the British. After much bitter debate and disagreement, they eventually agreed on an amazing solution. They would simply ask the British to stop. Can you stop? No. It didn't work. Okay, then tell the local militias to start arming and be ready at a minute's
I just
notice.
love his humor. It's so dry. It's so, oh, could you please? No, I love that.
And across the colonies, these Minutemen stood ready for the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. Now, having your colonies in open rebellion is one thing. Once they start arming themselves, that's when it really hits the fan. So British General Thomas Gage ordered 700 troops from Boston out into the rebel-controlled Massachusetts countryside to destroy stores of arms and ammunition held by the rebels in Concord. The British set out in the middle of the night. Patriots including Paul Revere rode ahead to warn that the British were coming, giving the rebels time to prepare. The two sides met in Lexington as the sun began to rise. They faced off against each other, and in the confusion, somebody shot first. The shot heard around the world marked the beginning of the American War of Independence. The rebels were outnumbered and had to fall back to Concord as the British split up.
So
to
this
search
is
for
not
rebels.
an army, right? That is just people that gather together. I really love that you gather together against a real army, you know, against real military, and just try to stand a chance. That is so brave. I really love
However,
that.
more and more Patriot rebels kept showing up, and this time it was the British who were outnumbered as
They
more
won?
fighting kicked off in Concord. The most professional army in the world was forced to flee back to Boston at the hands
Wow.
of local, poorly trained militiamen. And all along the British route back to Boston, Patriot rebels continued to
So
gather
cool,
and open
eh?
fire on the retreating British. When the British reached Boston, the rebel militias surrounded them. Boston and the British were now under siege as small land and naval skirmishes continued around the city.
So basically, normal humans, you know, not military trained humans, beat the best military in the world. That's so cool.
And the British would suffer another embarrassing blow, this time in upstate New York. Colonel Benedict Arnold concocted a plan to take the British stronghold Fort Ticonderoga, which held a large amount of guns and ammunition. He set off towards the fort alone, hoping to recruit men along the way. When he came across the Green
What
Mountain
was
Boys,
that flag?
He set off towards the fort alone, hoping to recruit men along the
This
way.
green
When he
one.
came across the Green Mountain Boys, led by Ethan Allen, who, as it turned out, had the
Okay.
exact same plan he did. So they decided to work together. But I'm in charge. No, 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 I'm in charge. This went on for some time, until the Green Mountain Boys threatened to go home, and Arnold had to concede. The group raided the fort at night while the Redcoats were asleep, and they caught them completely by surprise, taking the fort and all of its munitions with almost no resistance. Wow, great job, Ethan. Very impressive. By the way, what happened to that other guy we sent to take the fort? Who? Benedict Arnold. Never heard of him. Ouch. What the fuck? Nobody knew what was going on. The colonies were in open rebellion, and for now, they even seemed to be winning. So King George fired General Gage, replaced him with General William Howe, and ordered the rebellion to be put down immediately. Okay, the British are definitely going to retaliate for all of this, so we should probably put together a proper army. First, we need to pick a commander-in-chief, and I think we can all agree that that job should go to the man, the myth, the legend, George Washington. My friends, I am humbled and honored that you would consider me for such an important role. I did not expect for this. All right, you've been showing up in a military uniform every day for the last 10 months. We all know you wanted this, so cut the crap, George.
Is it true that he wanted to have this, but then was like, oh, thank you, I've never thought that this would happen. Was it true?
Dude. Uncool. So Washington began his journey up to Boston to take command of the newly established Continental Army, just as the British made their first major attempt to break the siege. They made plans to take the high ground on Bunker Hill, but spies warned the Continentals of the British plans, so they fortified Bunker Hill and set up defensive positions on nearby Breed's Hill. The day of the battle came, and as the British advanced, a barrage of Continental gunfire was opened up on them. Twice they tried to climb the hill, twice they were pushed back. The battle lasted 3 hours until the Continentals finally ran out of ammunition and had to retreat, allowing
I
the
love
British to
also the coverage of all of the battles. Because in Germany, we in our history, we mostly care about the causes. So why happened something? What were the reasons? For example, the climate, the political climate, stuff like this. But we mostly don't talk much about the war. Of course, for example, Napoleon, that he went to Russia, stuff like this, yes. But not like single battles or stuff like this.
take the hill. While technically a British victory, they suffered nearly 1,000 casualties to the 100. The colonists showed the British that this wasn't just a rebellion, it was war, and they were ready for it. But one thing they weren't sure about was why they were fighting. While some radicals were starting to throw around the I word, most hoped to eventually repair their relationship with Great Britain. So they sent a letter to King George saying, "Hey man, looks like things aren't going your way. Remove the taxes and let's be friends." I'm gonna kick your ass. Send that to the colonies. Your Majesty, your handwriting is terrible. Are you sure? Just do it. What does it say? He's gonna lick my gross. So for the remainder of the year, small engagements continued to occur around the colonies. The British burned down the towns of Falmouth, Massachusetts and Norfolk, Virginia as revenge for earlier anti-British incidents. These actions played right into the hands of patriot propaganda. Overseas, the British were seen as brutes, and the French and Spanish would soon begin sending supplies to the rebel cause. During this time, there was also minor fighting going on between patriot and loyalist militias in the southern colonies. Benedict Arnold was still on a mission to win some personal glory for himself, so he headed up an attempt to invade Canada in a two-pronged attack. The Continentals managed to capture some British forts and the city of Montreal, but a harsh snowstorm with some smallpox on the side saw them defeated.
So, okay, yeah, makes sense, right? Canada was also considered part of the colonies at that point.
Pushed back at Quebec City, and they were forced to retreat all the way to Fort Ticonderoga. Speaking of which, remember all those guns and ammunition? Well, this guy's got a plan for what to do with them. He uses oxen to drag 120,000 pounds of artillery for 2 months through the harsh winter, 300 miles all the way to Washington and his Continental Army surrounding Boston. Boom. Washington's got himself some big guns, which is fortunate because up until now his army had been suffering through the cold winter, not knowing when the siege would end. Now, they could make a move. Washington wanted to launch a full assault on the city, but his junior officers felt the British were too fortified, and to his credit, Washington was great at hearing and taking on board the ideas of others. Instead, the Continentals worked through the night setting the guns up on Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city, and when dawn broke and the British saw the guns, they knew they were toast. Their positions were completely exposed. It was checkmate. They had no choice but to abandon the city. 120 ships carried 9,000 redcoats and 2,000 loyalists away to an unknown fate, and Washington had his first victory of the war. Washington then moved his army to New York, knowing that when the British returned, they would probably land there. In the meantime, a friendly-looking old man...
You clearly see that Washington was, I think, a great leader because he don't say, oh, I'm right, I know everything, you know, but if he sees, okay, this guy maybe has a good point, I could listen to him. And that is what I really love. Yeah, if people do that, because you can't be always right. Yeah.
The name of Thomas Paine had written and published a pamphlet called Common Sense, in which he advocated for total independence from Great Britain. It spread across the colonies like wildfire, and to this day remains the best-selling title in America. It was read aloud in taverns and meeting halls, and brought the idea of independence into the mainstream. Congress began to seriously consider the idea. Thomas Jefferson was selected to write up an official Declaration of Independence, and he went hard, writing that all men are created equal, with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, Jefferson had over 100 slaves, but we don't have to talk about that. On the 2nd of July, Congress voted unanimously in favor of independence, go down as the most remembered day in American history. Then a couple days later, independence actually came into effect. The United States of America was born. There was no turning back now. The Americans tore down a statue of King George in New York and melted him down into 42,000 musket balls. To the British, it was treason. And if the king had his way, Washington and all of Congress would be hung. Speaking of the British, guess who's back? The king sent an intimidating force of 130 warships and 25,000 men to New York. Washington knew that taking on the most powerful military in the world wouldn't be easy. The British set up camp on Staten Island as the Americans dug into defensive positions around Brooklyn Heights, waiting for an attack to come. But the British just waited, wearing down their opponent's nerve while building their own strength. At one point, they launched a big scary artillery barrage and then said, you know, if I was you right now, I'd probably sue for peace. But Washington told them to shove it. The Americans kept holding out for what was coming, and when they finally hit, they hit hard. 15,000 British troops approached the American position, and the two sides fired on each other in massive rows. But what the Americans didn't realize was they were only fighting a decoy. The main British force was going around to flank the Americans from behind, and when they arrived, they inflicted heavy casualties. The Americans panicked and retreated back to Brooklyn Heights, where they then found themselves trapped between the British army and the river. It looked as though the war was already lost, but luckily, instead of attacking, the British decided to dig in for a siege, and then a thick fog set in, allowing Washington's army to escape across the river unimpeded. The British continued to chase and engage the Americans
so
off Manhattan.
Without this fog, probably there would be not an America to this point, to this day.
The Americans suffered defeat after defeat after defeat. It was a disaster. Washington's leadership was called into question, as thousands of American POWs were left to rot as traitors. Washington's army fled through New Jersey all the way down to Pennsylvania. Rarely had an army been so badly beaten, yet survived to fight another day.
Wow, epic ending. Okay, the second part of this video, or of this story about the American Revolution, when America finally fights back, at least I think they do, because there is an America today. That is what we're gonna do in the next video. But I want to have just a quick few thoughts about the video. First of all, I really adore and love Oversimplified. I love his humor. I love how he oversimplifies things. And what I really take from this video is how brave the people were, you know, to say, hey, no, to a real military. You know, it was not just guys with guns. They were trained. They were real military, and those farmers, those people that lived there, were just having a gun laying around, you know, and say, "Hey, honey, I go shoot something. You know, see you later," or maybe not. I don't know. That takes so much courage to do, and it's just a very wholesome story to see. Hey, people, if they come together, can do something even against a very, very strong power. Because, you know, in our times today, we always think about, hey, the government does something, and then we people maybe don't want it, and yeah, we can't do anything about it. But I think this story shows very, very much that this is possible, maybe a little bit different than it was 300 years or 250 years ago, but I think it's still possible, and I think that is a great example for it. So yeah, I really like the story so far, and I hope it becomes even better with the Americans fighting back in the next part. Please, if you like this content, write a comment, just what we should check out maybe next after we covered the American Revolution, and I love to hear your opinions about this. So until next time, keep liking, subscribing, and we see each other in the next video. Bye!